Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Athenia Rodney with Umoja Events, CEO and founder and co-creator of the Juneteenth New York City Juneteenth celebration. Today we're just coming to you with our new project that we have in the works called Juneteenth Learning Labs. Our learning labs are monthly webinars that will create a broadened awareness of Black culture using the Juneteenth platform of Kwanzaa principles that will help to move us towards better collaboration, rebuilding of national Black Wall Street, and empowering efforts that will help to put policies together for effective change. Every 19th, we are going to be hosting a different topic. So please continue to look out for those. We are putting them together. And if you have something that you would be interested in sharing with the broader community, we definitely invite you to send us an email at info@umojaevents.com. And that's INFO at umoja events.com. As you have been following us for a while, we have been doing Juneteenth for 11 years now. This year, because of COVID-19, we had to transition and do things online. And we're very excited that we had so many that were able to join us and to participate. I think we had our final numbers that looked at the presentation as well as were part of it on the day of were a little over 10,000 people. So that just expressed to us that there is definitely a big interest right now in Black culture. And we want to continue to keep conversations going and talking about how we can pull ourselves together as a community to experience growth. So today we have Ms. Lisa Hayes from the Blueprint Project. She'll be talking to us about getting back to our village. So I'm going to bring Lisa on.
Hey there,
Hello,
everyone.
Lisa. Hey. So welcome to
Thank
the
you. Thank you.
Juneteenth Learning Labs. We are very glad to have you on board. And I am going to pass it over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the welcome. And I am equally excited to be here. I just wanted to thank Juneteenth New York City and Umoja Events for inviting me on. I think that these learning labs are going to be a great way and opportunity for the word to get out over the year, and as people become more aware of Juneteenth and also of Kwanzaa and the principles, they have an opportunity to really continue the education and empowering. Um, as Athenia said, I'm going to talk today about getting back to the village. So my name is Lisa Hayes, and I have a nonprofit that is actually called The Village. And it's really based on the African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. It also comes from or stems from the fact that when over the years I've seen people online talking about we need to get back to the way things were, the way that things used to be, we have this nostalgic feeling about what it means to have and be a part of a community. And in order to do that, the concept for me is really about how much are you willing to be a villager? So I have one of my flagship projects is called the Blueprint Project, and it's all about transforming communities into centers of excellence and successful production. The goal is to restore pride, education, self-improvement, and community relations. So those are some of the things that we focus on. To effectively take control of our community, to build unity and set a solid foundation for families and children to flourish, we have to first look at and focus on the things that impact our collective lives as members of the community. We have people who are on the front lines protesting, who are working through policy changes, etc. But then there's also another element that we can physically control ourselves, and that's ourselves, right? So the other things are really looking for society or laws to really be able to help support us through their efforts and make changes that are going to impact our daily lives. But then the other component of that is what do we own and what can we control for ourselves? So I always ask this question, is like, Do you know that people who live in supremacist societies eventually develop self-hate? And that being subject to domination and exploitation deprives us of the agency of self-determination and alters our ability to care about and love ourselves and others. So if we choose to focus on love of self and community, rather than becoming absorbed by the influence and definition of others, so true must be the opposite, that we have the ability to determine our own path, to chart our own course, to make decisions that influence our lives now and the lives of those to come for generations and generations and generations. So, my focus is really creating a culture of freedom and possibility. These possibilities are enacted by leaders, and not just regular leaders, it's community action leaders, people who think about things, who think beyond what we've already seen and heard. See, a lot of times what we've been doing is kind of falling in line with the way that we've always done things. And you know what they say about doing the same thing gets the same result. So this is a little bit of a different approach. And I kind of start out with like a little bit of a, I don't want to say history lesson, but kind of take you back for a minute. So racism was created by low self-esteem, and not just for the blacks or by the oppressed people, but the people who saw themselves as better. Their self-esteem, their own self-esteem made them feel like they were less than, and they had to do something through a law or some action to make themselves above. So when, as over time, obviously there was going to be a movement for resistance, and that was a key driver for Black Pride. So what we saw in the late 50s and 60s was a lot of talk and discussion about Black Pride. So anyone, no matter who we are as people, human race, self-development is rooted in pride. Pride improves your ability to be your best self. And there was a time when we focused on holistic development for Black people of all classes. And our goals were to educate ourselves, to work hard, to have either some sort of religious or spiritual foundation, and also to value others. That's still in us. We uplifted one another through self-help, and we emulated the examples that were set for us, and then in turn motivated others to do the same. So there was like a cycle of us being progressive and growing and working together. The civil rights movement, to some extent, shifted us away from that racial uplift because the focus was on gaining equality with whites. So when the movement ended, the focus ended, and it kind of took our pride right along with it, right? So we lost the inner psychological development and the spiritual development of the self. We started focusing on things that were outside of us and looking to compete in arenas and spaces where we hadn't before. So now we need a new focus that's going to transition us from that civil rights mindset that we're still in, to back to the right, to develop ourselves and our community. We need to refocus. So it doesn't make sense really that if we gain new ground and we have all this equality, obviously the first thing that we need to do is develop a blueprint. And we haven't really done that. So the blueprint is, now that we have access to things that we didn't have, say, 50 and 60 years ago, we never put a plan in place for how we were going to use those things and how we were going to organize them. So just like when you build, looking to build a house from the ground up or some sort of structure, you create a plan first, you create your blueprint, and that becomes your vision. So the Blueprint Project focuses really on everyday life. It's not about coming up with new solutions because we know what we have to do. We have a number of organizations and businesses that are supporting the foundations of what it means to be Black, and also our experiences, providing us goods and services, resources. We have all of those things. They're just currently not as organized as we might need them to be for them to be fully effective. So each day, the Blueprint Project is really about infusing the things that we know, infusing this vision into the things that already exist. It includes promotion of integrity and education and hard work and service to others through cooperative programming. The civil rights movement didn't really look so much at the impact to everyday life. So our elders found themselves in very challenging situations because they were then trying to align themselves with a society that was foreign to us. If you think about it, Black homes in the South were largely made up of two parents living in the home with the mother and the father, who both had their own roles of what they were doing, both in public and in private spaces. Our men didn't subjugate our women; they were more like partners. And so when the civil rights legislation came about, and we were looking for ways to become equal with whites, we also found ourselves trying to compete in certain spaces, and it changed the way and the dynamics of how it impacted the family. So not just materially and in education, but also in the family as well. So it's just something to think about, that those family structures may not have been so secure in and of themselves, and then we found ourselves trying to emulate and follow those patterns because we thought that that was the model for success. We lost our own modeling. We lost our solidarity. We lost the strong-minded, strong-willed, positive, encouraging teachings for our young men and women, which were detrimental to our progress. Even, excuse me, Dr. King warned about choosing materialism over communalism. He begged the question, what shall it profit a man if he gain the whole world of externals and lose his own soul? And that's kind of like what happened even with his assassination, or the assassination of Malcolm X and Medgar Evers and countless others. It left a really big gaping hole in our communities, holes of hopelessness and despair. We replaced the dreams that we had in a lot of spaces, that dreams of progressing and development and building our communities. We gave up our quest because they kind of knocked the wind in the air out of us. It was a scary time. And we've kind of grown up in this new age, I want to say, post civil rights legislation era. We've kind of grown up in this time of being cautious and being afraid, and kind of staying under the radar, if you will, because when we had leaders that were stepping up, they were killed in public fashion and very brutally. So when we gave those things up, we numbed the pain with other things, and we started to buy stuff. And so we kind of fell into the media brainwash, and, started to forget about some of the democratic and civil principles to uphold. And we started to uphold material wealth, and that became kind of like our litmus or our measuring stick for well-being and success in our communities. In some cases, we traded in our ethical, moral, and spiritual beliefs, which used to be the foundations for Black life and prosperity. So where we are now with the Blueprint Project, it's all about, the first step is really defining what is our image. Who are we as people? And what that means is not necessarily what society says for us. It's not how we have to negotiate our image and negotiate um, our sense of self in public spaces. It's a quest for freedom, and it's not even a quest anymore. It's living our freedoms and living our truths. But true freedom requires hard work. It requires the development and cultivation of holistic individuals. It's the full development of the self that requires education, and not necessarily like academic education. When I say that, it's we need to understand and know history, because they say that there's multiple sides to a story, and that is very important for us to know. But true education comes from here, what we're thinking and what we're feeling and how we interpret information and data. The word education comes from the Latin word educar, which means to bring forth or to induce. So to educate or to educe is really to bring forth the natural abilities and talents of a person. So to define the self and not indoctrinate ourselves with any type of predefined set of characteristics. It means that we have to learn to think critically. And we have to do that together, right? So this is not obviously not saying that everyone falls into a category of not thinking or not being educated or not being aware, but as a group, as a culture, as a people, we're not working in concert with one another. We align ourselves with different interests, but for the most part, we have to start aligning ourselves with this. This is our Blackness. That's what unites us. It's our collective lived experience. And that's where we come together. In order to truly define what we want for our communities, we have to understand first who we are and embrace that truth about ourselves. And this is not an easy task. I don't come here and kind of put it out there like this is 1, 2, 3 thing, and we can just talk about our image, a simple conversation, and that's what it is. We move forward. It's not that. We have to really accept that we are living in someone else's perception of us. It means that we have to divorce our minds from, external thinking and, type of imperialist type thinking. And the difference is really a matter of being willing to cross that bridge from ignorance and not knowing to that of full consciousness and manifestation of the collective greatness and power that we possess as a people. The task at hand is really to define a culture of soulfulness, resistant to dehumanization or labeling, to develop and define ourselves as hopeful, loving, and unscathed by the intentions of outwardly imposed negative images. We know that we possess these qualities, so we have to take them and put them into action. It means taking over the right to define ourselves, our community, and our children by not allowing others to make us believe that we're freaks of nature if we're smart, or if we're vegans, or if we go on vacation, or not telling us, or not telling us that we are quote unquote ghetto because we have colorful hair or piercings, or because we wear our hair a certain way. None of these things are unique to Black people. But by all means, we also need to stop saying these things of ourselves. We need to stop feeding into the stereotypes that are created for us. To be these things should not mean an undervaluation of our Blackness. Our Blackness is amazing. I mean, we are the most creative people on the planet. Pop culture is basically synonymous with everything that we do. The dominant society takes what we do and things that are considered ghetto, and then they appropriate them and make them popular and public, and make them something that's socially acceptable because it's a different source. So to label us and make it seem like the things that we do are bad or off-centered is really unfair to all of us. And it's not fair to us for ourselves to take those things in and start believing them as truth. The task before us means that we have to move to a place where we're not thirsty for validation and acknowledgement, or that we have to beg and fight or even die to define who we are, or to be who we are. It's time for us to take back the 50 plus years that have been lost while we focused on acceptance from others and lost sight, really, of what's acceptable to us. Because we will give freely. And, we have to work in our own little enclaves with one another to do what it is that we need to do to give ourselves that validation. We don't need it from other people. We will give and receive respect from one another to one another. That has to become part of our code. That's part of, going back to what we were talking about a moment ago about the village, right? That's that level of respect that was, when you saw someone else that may have been a stranger, you greet them, you talk to them. If children see adults, the way that they talk to them and interact with them is extremely important. We have to work with and for one another, and that becomes our ethic. And we will support and love one another because that is what we value. To be able to say that we have pride in where we come from will be such that it removes the opportunities for self doubt to grow. From the beginning of time, even if you go back to the inscripted walls of ancient Egypt, there's evidence of love for children. The sacrifices of slave mothers and fathers to protect their young in the Middle Passage, and even to just the nameless people and heroes who died on the front lines as guinea pigs and other strange fruit, all for us to now take advantage of this time. It is a culture that affirms, that sustains, that nurtures. These have been things that have been consistent for us throughout time. We can't allow ourselves to focus on race as the marker of identity. It is the thing that unites us. Our lived experience in this country is all about the melanin in our skin. But I'm more than my skin. You're more than your skin. We have to focus on the soul because that's where humanity and righteousness begin. And this is really the Blueprint Project. It happens through discussions and forums that are designed to define the greatest challenges facing our communities, to determine the collective vision of the current and future life in the community. It's assessing the gaps between what is and what's to be, and it's taking action. And once that action is put into place, it's a process of continual evaluation to maintain and improve the results. So I, implore you, if you want to get back to the village, again, I tell you, you have to be willing to step up and be a villager. The Blueprint Project is on Facebook. It's a Facebook group right now. It's just called the Blueprint Project, and Athenia, I see that she posted that link. So please feel free to join, encourage others. I'm just going to stop here in case there are some questions. I see that there were some comments that were coming in, so I appreciate, Laura, your feedback. We did focus on acceptance. So there's a lot of things that we can improve and move forward and allow ourselves to work together collectively. I'll just pause here if there are any questions. Athenia?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for that, Lisa. We definitely, you were getting the hearts all over the place on
Okay,
social
great.
media. So I know it's a little difficult to be able to see what's going on behind the scenes, but you definitely would be well received. So thank you for the comments that are being posted. One of the things that came up was, so you talked about focusing on the civil rights movement to gain equality. We lost the fight in building our village. Can you talk a little bit more about, because I think, people are going to beg to differ with that. They're going to be like, they felt like that might have helped to grow the village more because there was something unified to fight towards that people saw. People saw the injustices, and it helped to, I would say, maybe bring people together instead of reduce the focus.
In a lot of spaces, it did. So it's not to discredit the movement at all. I know that there are some people who are pro-segregation or anti-segregation. What I do know from the research that I've done is that before the civil rights movement, Black communities were self-sustaining. And we were our own, professionals. We were doctors and lawyers and, skilled shoe repair and whatever it was that we needed. We had grocery stores, etc. There was not just a single Black Wall Street. There were communities all over that were totally insulated and fully Black owned. We owned property, and we, managed our own school systems and structures, etc. I think where we had a challenge and what made the civil rights movement necessary was that when we looked for opportunities to grow in those spaces, we were capped. There were ceilings there. We
Mhm.
also, the same challenge that we have today is that we don't have any means to production. We don't own wholesale. We don't, the actual raw goods and the source of materials. So that created another cap for us. So what
Mm.
happened was the civil rights movement, and in all validity, sought to create an equality that said, hey, if we need these things, let us get them. Why are
Mhm.
you stopping us? If we're equal, allow us to do that. And I think somewhere along the way, we lost the idea that we just needed to be able to have access so that we could use those things in our own spaces. In a lot of ways, what happened, and again, this is just my observation, so I'm not trying to push it off on anyone. But what I did see was when we got that equality, it went beyond being able to have access to or opportunity to buy things and take it back to our
Mm.
communities. We really got stuck on our ability to go into white spaces and spend our dollars. And when we were going into those
Mm.
spaces and spending our dollars, it wasn't on things that we could then bring back to our communities to recircle and recycle those dollars and make them useful to the community. It was on material things. And I think
Mhm.
what happened, and I believe that was the next stage, but they killed off our leaders, right? So
Yeah.
when we got there and we were able to triumph and say, okay, now we've got access, there was no plan to say, here's how we're going to use that access and
Mm.
continue to build up our communities. So we found ourselves moving more into, say, white spaces and then needing to compete there. And because of the laws that they were putting in place, they were just formalizing the caps that they put on us, right? So they were baking it into the laws. They had informal agreements, the Jim Crow laws, things like that that didn't allow us to exercise and be able to grow within their lane. Whereas we kind of abandoned our lane and we've spent so much time trying to be in their lane that
Mm.
they've had the opportunity to say, well, we own print and we own media and we own movies, and everywhere that you can see an image of Black people, we define that. Even
Mm.
when you see something that looks quote unquote positive about us, there's 99% of the time someone white behind that is defining what that goodness looks like
It's
for
like, yeah.
us. We're
Yeah.
not in the room where we're able to speak. So this is really about us being able to take that back and define who we are,
Mhm.
and say for ourselves how we want to be represented when other people are representing us and when we represent ourselves.
Yeah. No, I mean, when you were just talking, what came up for me was the whole situation that's happened around Nick Cannon, right? It's like he had this platform, and
Mhm.
it was, something that a lot of people were very engaged in. And it's like he said one thing, and it was like, "Well, your whole
Mhm.
your whole life is swiped away."
Yes.
So it was like the reality of it, is that he really didn't own it. It wasn't, it really wasn't his. And
Hmm.
even who was another person that talked about Iyanla Van Zant was another one that talked
Hmm.
about, her struggle. If you read her books, she talked about the struggle of, it's like she's out there and she's putting all these positive things out into the community and encouraging Black people to be their better selves.
Hmm.
And then they came in, and they, as in the network, came in. It's like, well, we want you to do this, and she was like, I don't, she started to do it, and she's like, I don't feel comfortable doing this. And as
That's
soon as she stood up for herself and said no, swiped right off the air. Like,
it. Hmm.
so, just kind of talking about us trying to constantly interject ourselves
Hmm.
into the wider community and not being accepted, or being contained, or having, like you say, this glass ceiling. But
Hmm.
what is that, taking that and saying, let's just create our own, and
Exactly.
where it's limitless as far as the ceiling is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
But then it becomes, how do we get our people to support us?
Well, I was just gonna go there. So when you said that, so one thing, so I'll talk about the Nick Cannon thing just from one perspective, that, you know, all the networks bailed on him. But think about the other part of it, is that it's because we don't have a network. If we had a network, we, you know, the network would have said, "Hey, Nick, let's, you know, come over here and keep doing what you do."
I said we have owned with Oprah.
Okay. Oprah's different.
You're right.
But then even with Iyanla, to your point, how do we get our people? That's what. So when I talk about defining our image and saying who we are and what we want, when we set a criteria and we set a goal and a standard for ourselves and what's going to be included in our spaces, all we have to do is look to say, look, we've got this criteria 1 through 10. Does what she's doing meet the criteria? Yes, it does. It helps to move us forward. There's no hate involved when you already establish a criteria. When something is checking off all the boxes, right? So the Blueprint Project, we focus on communication because we're not so good at that. I think just overall, right? We don't have a centralized space where we're communicating things. A lot of times we are small operations and small shops. It takes us a long time to get the details together. And so by the time we do, we're like a week away, a few days away, and that's when we're notifying people of things. So, and I'm laughing because I do the same thing. And I've worked with so many different organizations that do that. We have to focus on education, but not just academic, although that's a really big challenge. And right now with COVID-19 and the school situations being so precarious, the achievement gaps are going to become astronomical, right? But then we also have to think about education in the sense of thinking critically and what it means to not just tell people that information and resources are available, but also giving them the knowledge to be able to make informed decisions and understand their why. Right. So then there's a health and wellness component. There's job readiness and college prep, and there's social and emotional health. So if we think about Iyanla and what she's doing from an emotional health or a mental health point of view, then we can say, is she stacking up? Is this giving us what we need, even if it's not something that I personally need, but if it's helping us to move forward, then we have to support it, period. We have to get out of that mindset. And Laura was saying, yes, the crabs in a barrel syndrome. But the crabs in a barrel syndrome comes a lot of times because it comes from people who are in situations that they deem hopeless. Because our souls have really been stripped of our willingness and our motivation, our willingness to work on something and do something different. It's a challenge. It's a real challenge. When you go off, I had a situation where I knew of a young boy who went off to college. And he only lasted 1 semester. And it was because when he came home during his breaks, 1 year. When he came home during his breaks, he saw that his friends and everyone else was doing something different. He told me he ran into someone on a train who had gone to college and finished. And that person was working still an hourly job. And so from that point, they felt like they didn't understand the point. And it's because we haven't put our young people and even some adults in the right spaces to see possibility. They only see possibility as far as their corner or as far as their city limits. They don't really see beyond that. And we can't keep putting models in front of people like an Oprah because that gap is too insurmountable. She's a multi-billionaire, right? So, I mean, we can all hope to get to that at some point in life, but it's probably not the trajectory for most of us. So when we see it, we can respect it, we can appreciate it, but we can't look at it as, being able to see or visualize ourselves in that pathway. So crabs in a barrel, that mentality also comes about because you think about it, media and, you know, the news and everything that we see tells us that we can't.
Right.
It tells us that we're not allowed to. So we've internalized these negative messages and we give them back to one another.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you look at commercials on TV and someone's, you know, it could be like a Jergens commercial or something for lotion or whatever, or Neutrogena, and it's a major brand, but you don't see, you know, Kathy's body butter in a commercial. So we're more likely to say, oh, Kathy's not going to blow up. It's, you know, she's not going to get a best-selling brand because, you know, she's whatever the reasons are. So that crabs in a barrel mentality comes about because we're just externalizing what's been fed to us. When we start to think about and realize how we've been impacted by the external images, that kind of talking stops.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I mean, I totally agree.
And when we establish our image and say we are these things and our goals are this, and this is what we want for our communities, and we put that into everything that we do, and we check ourselves and our own motivations, we stop saying things like that because we want to see the best in each other as well as ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, you totally hit it right on the nose. I mean, even when you were talking through your presentation, you talked about, you know, the low self-image, right? The self-image of African American people. I remember, you know, I'm a part of your Blueprint group, and what drew me so much to you was I think the first question that you had put up on the first day that you kind of started getting things going was, and I'm probably going to paraphrase and remember exactly, but like, how do you see yourself? You know, it's like, what, you know, where do you want to see yourself in the future? And so many people were kind of like, well, you know, so negative in their thought, so, you know, low vibrational about it. And I was like, I'm look, Oprah, she's my idol. Like, look, I see myself as a billionaire. I don't know. I have plans on how I'm going to get there, but, you know, I have to have that as a goal in mind to be able to push towards it. If I keep telling myself this self-doubt, like, oh, I'll never get there, or I can never become that, or that's never something for me to aspire towards, then, you know, I feel defeated before I even began. Absolutely. So, you know, and I feel like a lot of that is what's kind of happening in our community already. It's like we're defeated before we even begin because we're already on top of the lack of support by our community. We have our own internal fights that we're fighting amongst ourselves based on the views that are constantly be shown to us. You know, I would say the most empowering time for me has been this time during COVID, because the biggest thing that I did is I turned off my TV. Like, my TV was not on, you know, and even with social media, some people had to hit me up. I was like, unless you were inboxing me on Facebook or Instagram directly or text messaging me, I wasn't seeing what was going on, you know, and that was kind of intentional. Part of that was kind of intentional because I needed to limit the guys and things that were coming into my spirit, and I needed to put into my spirit what I wanted to have in my spirit. So I was reading books, listening to numbers of webinars, and seeing how I can, you know, expand myself and grow myself, because and I kind of get the crabs in the barrel series too, because it was like I was around everybody who was like, oh, they pivoted and they're doing all of this stuff with their businesses. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's great. And it's like some of the ideas that I was thinking, you know, I'm seeing people putting it forth, and I'm like, so I shouldn't do that because they're already doing it. It's like, well, like you said, there's 100 lotions that are on the table that are out there. So why can't there be, you know, 50? Why can't it be 100 Black businesses that are doing the same thing? Why do we continue to limit ourselves based on, you know, the competition, or based on, it's like, yeah, God put it into my spirit, so he put it in my spirit for a certain reason, and I need to move on that. So I mean, I definitely I see and I appreciate everything that you're doing, especially with, you know, helping with the mindset. I feel like you know, I've been celebrating Kwanzaa for the last, I don't even know, maybe 20 something years, because of my best friend's family, not even because of my own. I would, you know, her family constantly celebrated Juneteenth. She, you know, every year, you know, when I was in high school with her, she'd be like, I'm not going to school on the 19th. This is my national holiday. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I knew nothing about what Juneteenth was at that time. And now, here we are years later, and it's like I'm here trying to champion the ship. Like, no, everybody we need to
Mhm.
get on board, understand, what our celebration is and what it should be, and how we can continue to move ourselves forward together, like you said, in unity.
Mhm.
And utilizing the Kwanzaa principles of to do so. And when you were, like I said, on the blueprint, I really didn't understand what like Kujichagulia, self-determination, really
Mhm.
meant, right? Until like when you started talking about it, and I was like, that's it. Like that I'm like, oh, I understand it now. Like so a light bulb just went off in my head, and I was like,
Mhm.
that's what self-determination means. It means
Yeah.
me figuring out for myself
Yeah.
how I want to be as a person,
Right.
how I want to be
Right.
determined, instead of using the lens that has been given to me by greater society.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. And the beauty of it though is that who we are and who we want to be is a collective definition,
mhm,
right? And it can be all encompassing and it doesn't exclude anyone because of their interests. It just talks about who we are living in this shared experience in America, right? Because it's very unique to
mhm,
us. And even, there are people with melanated skin who don't subscribe to it, but they still somehow feel the effects of it. And they may deny it and not want to acknowledge it. Like I think I had said before at one point, just because you don't like collard greens doesn't mean that you're not black. You still are living an experience. If you go to the store and buy tofu, someone can still treat you in a weird way, or whatever it may be that is defined as not being black. Those things are just superficial. We can't hide and
right,
run from our skin. Um, and our blackness is all encompassing. So it doesn't discriminate or devalue someone because of their sexuality or because of their marital status or because of, whether they're lighter or darker shade. It doesn't matter. It's still melanin. It's still present and visible. Our skin is a physical and psychological reminder that we
yeah,
were second class citizens. So
yeah,
it's, people can say all day, oh, well, this ended and slavery ended and this is over and that's over. It's psychological. It's in our subconscious. We know it, they know it, and it impacts everything that happens on a daily basis. I mean, I can't tell you how many people that I know that didn't realize that they were racist, didn't realize their privilege. And it came about because, we had time. Like these past few months, I've had time
yeah,
to really
yeah,
break some things down to people and explain to them, their behaviors. And there's been a lot of eye opening going on. And it works both ways because then you start to see in real life how people think and see and feel and how they're behaving, and it influences the way that we now need to start thinking about the things that really matter. It's
yeah.
those little things where it comes out that makes the difference.
No, I definitely agree on that
Hmm.
one.
Yeah.
Well, any last words? This was great. I definitely appreciate you coming on and kicking off the Juneteenth Learning Labs.
Yes, me too.
This is I felt like this was the best place to start. As
Absolutely.
far as we're starting with the head, right? We're starting, as some people will say, the chakra,
Hmm.
what leads the pack, like what's pushing us to go forward, and that definitely starts with how we view ourselves. We cannot work together, or we can't learn to work together
Hmm.
if we don't view ourselves as a group of people who work together. So, um,
At a bare minimum.
at the very least. So I definitely thank you, and I appreciate that. Everyone, I posted in the chat as well, the direct link. All you have to do is press it to join Lisa's page, or just do a search for the Blueprint Project. It, like I said, there's some great content in there. And Lisa's real. I love her, her realness to her. And it's crazy because we were met on something totally outside of this whole world.
Totally unrelated. But see,
So
that's the universe. The universe brings
it
people
is.
together, brings spirits together.
It definitely
Right.
does. I also want to thank you for agreeing to be a part of our group. I want to talk about our Juneteenth. So since I said this is like our 11th year, right, of doing Juneteenth, for next year, for our 12th year, we're going to be really dynamic, really different, right? And we are doing a summit. So we will be doing a weekend summit that would begin on June the 18th, and it will go until the 20th next year. So we invite you to send us the email if you are interested at info@emojievents.com. Put in the title Juneteenth in being a part. But basically, we meet weekly as we discuss topics that are related to the planning for the Juneteenth 2021 event. On Friday, we will be doing health and wellness. So any and all things that are health and wellness. On Saturday, which will be the actual Juneteenth day, we are talking about the Black Wall Street. What are the holes? So you had started to talk about initially like where we are with everything. Like we had the Black Wall Street. Black Wall Street had all its different facets. We had our own supermarkets, laundromats, libraries, school systems, banks, all of those things. And now we're still falling into spaces where we have holes, right? Like and we're going to be sitting down. We're going to be talking about where are those holes and how, as a unified group, we can start to fix those holes. So how can we put investors that we have together along with the visionaries, because sometimes those are not one and the same. The people who have the visions don't have the investment, and they don't have the go-between either, right? So again, it's that talking about unity, how we're working together, how we're trusting one another as a unified group to build on something that we're missing in our community. And then on Sunday, we're going to be talking about the history of the Black church, and where all of that stems from. We're going to be talking about Bible verses and really just the history and where Black people come into the space. During slavery, the Bible was used more as a tactic of control. And it wasn't, and because rightfully so, because Black people couldn't read, right? We couldn't comprehend for ourselves what the Bible was really telling us. So we depended on others to read it and to interpret it for us and to tell us what we were supposed to be doing. And we're at a new age and a new time, but yet we're still being educated by the masses on what the Bible is telling us and not taking it in for ourselves. So that's going to be on Sunday, and then afterwards we are going to have a food festival. So we're talking about different tribes, right? So each tribe had its own food that they cultivated, but it was very in line and similar to another culture. So in our Haitian, Spanish, Jamaican, Trinidadian, African American culture, everybody has their version of rice and peas. Everyone has their version of macaroni and cheese. So basically, we will have a consortium of sorts of different foods that people will be able to go by and taste the different traditions of how that's being made. So I said that all is to say, if you are interested in participating and planning those thoughts for Juneteenth Summit 2021, which will be held on June 18th through the 20th, please email me, info@emojievents.com, with the title Juneteenth, so that we can bring you into the fold and help to make this event an amazing one. Lastly, we are doing some fundraising efforts, and the fundraising efforts around supporting our Black businesses, because I feel like in a lot of the talks that we have been having around the community have been about supporting individual families, about supporting individuals, and like you spoke about, Lisa. We need to create spheres and where we are building our own empires and where there is no ceiling. And So how do we do that if we're not supporting each other? So that's where we are creating a Black directory, but this directory is not like a regular directory, you know, because when I've gone through a number of people who said that they've had directories, and I've looked at their spaces and I'm like, oh, you know, this is cool. But, you know, my business name is Umoja Events. That starts with the U. And, you know, to me, directories are similar to the yellow pages, and not for nothing, my business would never have gotten looked at because nobody's ever going to the U. Like nobody's going, they'll go to Z maybe and be like, oh, let me see who's in the Z area. But the U's, the Y's, you know, all of those people at the end of the yellow pages, they don't get looked at. So really creating a concerted effort, a showcasing, and opportunities for small businesses to be seen by large corporations. One thing that has happened during this whole COVID-19 and the pandemic of Black Lives Matter, I call it pandemic because it has gone national, it's gone worldwide. So I've considered that to be the second pandemic for us. But one thing that has happened during that time is all things have been focused on Black culture. And during when we were planning for Juneteenth, so many organizations like Amazon and T-Mobile reached out to me and they were like, how can we support? How can we, you know, be a sponsor? And so I am looking at utilizing my connections that I've been able to make over the years with a lot of our previous sponsors. And we work with a lot of large organizations like Home Depot and Lowe's and all of those great places to put in front of their body of employees our list of Black businesses that they can pull from. So we have a lot in store. So definitely continue to stay engaged on our Juneteenth Family Day page. And every 19th, also look out for our next Learning Lab. So thank you all for joining us. I appreciate you all. Lisa, again, much love and appreciation for you joining us in these Learning Labs. And I hope everyone enjoyed, and we look forward to next month. So have a blessed one, everyone. Enjoy.